Welcome to the first part of my Mistborn the Final Empire read-along. In this video, we'll be covering the prologue as well as part 1 of the book. There will be spoilers for that section in the video, but not for the rest of the book or anything else in the Cosmere. I intend to make this read-along as new reader-friendly as possible. If this is your first time reading anything Cosmere related, welcome! I couldn't be happier to have you along for the ride. This will be a brief overview of what happened as well as some of my thoughts. Without further ado, let's jump right in. In my opinion, the prologue for Mistborn is fantastic. The amount of information we're given about Scadrial, the world that Mistborn is set on, we are shown that Scadrial has a two-caste society comprised of the nobles and the Ska. The Ska are essentially property, to be used in whatever terrible way that their noble overseers wish. We are also introduced to Kelsier, and discover very quickly that he despises the nobility, and has the drive, capacity, and ruthlessness to try and change the status quo through violence if necessary. We also see that Kelsier is ruthlessly utilitarian. Not only is he willing to kill everyone at the Trusting Manor, but he also has no moral qualms about putting the Ska plantation into a position where they are all but forced to join the Ska rebellion or be slaughtered. One of the things I absolutely love about Brandon's prose is how easy it feels to read. You get given so much information, but it doesn't seem overwhelming. I never get exhausted or anything by reading it like I do in, say, something like Malazan. Following the prologue, we are introduced to Vin, and immediately we realize that she has lived a terrible life, and that her current situation isn't much better. She's beholden to Cayman, the leader of a Ska thieving crew, after her abusive brother, Reen, fled, leaving Vin as the sole person responsible for the crippling debts that Reen left behind. Cayman is abusive and cruel, and that's what Vin has grown to expect out of anyone with power over her. She tries to stay out of the way and be useful in whatever way she can. She also has a strange ability that she doesn't really understand that she refers to as luck, but that we later realize is allomancy. Cayman has identified that for some reason, having Vin around seems to make his plans go better, but is completely ignorant beyond that. This is understandable, as allomancy only manifests itself in people who have noble blood, and is extremely uncommon to be interacted with in the world of the underground Ska thieving crews. Cayman is recruited for a job to scam from the Steel Ministry. The Steel Ministry is the priesthood of the Lord Ruler, however they don't really act as priests, but rather as the bureaucracy for the Final Empire. Cayman brings Vin along to the Canton of Finance, which is the office that the obligators in charge of the Final Empire's finances work from, as he attempts to scam a high-up official of the Steel Ministry known as an obligator. Vin inadvertently uses emotional allomancy on the obligator as Cayman is trying to convince him, and the scam appears to work. Cayman and Vin are able to leave the Canton of Finance with 3,000 of the Final Empire's high-value currency, boxings, an absolutely massive score for Ska thieving crews. However, neither Vin nor Cayman truly understand what they're doing, or that the obligators are trained to identify when emotional allomancy is used on them. The Steel Ministry begins secretly tailing them so that they can eliminate the entire crew. Ska mistings are illegal, and the Steel Minister hunts them out ruthlessly. They send a terrifyingly powerful Steel Inquisitor after them. Fortunately, Kelsier and Hathsin, who is Kelsier's right-hand man, witness the entire thing as they are scouting out Vin after rumors of her abilities have spread. They are able to save the crew from being destroyed by diverting the Inquisitor and escaping. This is the first event that brings Vin and Kelsier together. We also start to get an understanding of the incredibly high stakes that Ska mistings are playing whenever they risk revealing themselves to the Final Empire. We also get to understand the horrible types of people that Vin has become accustomed to living and working with, and understand why she would be so untrusting and paranoid towards anyone who doesn't fit her expectations of how people act. Vin is unsettled by her encounter at the Canton of Finance, and she tries to escape Cayman's lair with a crewmate. However, the crewmate betrays her, and Cayman, in a rage at her attempted escape, starts to beat her near to death. Kelsier bursts into the hideout. After letting the crew know about the danger that they were saved from, Kelsier removes Cayman from his position and invites Vin to stay along for a meeting with some of Kelsier's new friends, where we are introduced to Breeze, the brass misting or soother, Ham, the pewter misting, also known as a thug, Clubs, who can burn copper, which makes him a smoker, and Yeadon, who is the leader of the Ska Rebellion. Kelsier reveals the seemingly impossible job that he has accepted from Yeadon to overthrow the Lord Ruler and steal his atium, the exceedingly rare and incredibly powerful allomantic metal responsible for the Lord Ruler's wealth and his control over the nobility. They also have to recruit an army for the Ska Rebellion so that they can hold the capital city, Luthadel, in the unlikely event that they are able to succeed. Kelsier's charisma and gravitas are on full display as he convinces the crew to join him. Vin is also curious about Kelsier and the dynamic that he seems to share with his crew. Kelsier cares deeply for the character of the men that he works with, and refuses to work with anyone he can't trust. This goes completely against everything Vreen taught Vin as they were growing up. Eventually, Vin reluctantly accepts as well. She doesn't trust Kelsier or his crew, but she's eager to learn about her newfound allomantic powers and how to use them. I loved the dynamic of every member of the crew. It was interesting that they were aware of each other, and you get the impression that the Ska Misting community is fairly tight-knit but secretive, but they haven't actually worked together. It leads to some tension in how they interact with each other, but in my personal experience, varying personalities tend to lead to more interesting and usually greater results. Kelsier leaves Vin and Dox at Club's carpentry shop, which will be their base of operations. Kelsier leaves to steal some more atium from Keep Venture, the residence of the most powerful noble house in the Final Empire, as he'd used his last atium, diverting the Steel Inquisitor. This is our first taste of what a trained Mistborn is capable of, as he not only successfully infiltrates the Keep and steals the atium, but we discover that he has more than one goal in attacking the noble stronghold. He wants to sow paranoia among the nobles, and make sure that an alarm is raised. Kelsier ruthlessly slaughters a dozen guards, many of whom who are haze killers, men who are equipped and trained specifically to deal with Mistborn. As he escapes, Kelsier feels no remorse for any of these killings. He despises the nobility, and views any Ska who agree to work for them as guards as traitors. This is our first taste at how epic Mistborn's allomancy is for action scenes, and believe me, this is just the start. The combination of dynamic and fluid action, paired with the brilliant problem solving that is enabled by a magic system which has rules and limitations that we understand, leads to some of my favorite action scenes in any book I've ever read, and I literally cannot wait for a screen adaptation. Returning our perspective to Club's shop, Vin is thrust into a completely alien situation, having a safe and quiet place to sleep, plenty of food to eat, and a perfumed bath. She is struck by how the crew live more like noblemen than Ska, and doesn't know what to make of any of it. The workers at the shop all seem well cared for and happy. Again, Reen's voice in Vin's mind tells her that this is not how the world works, and she is constantly waiting for the inevitable betrayal or abuse. She expects that Kelsier will teach her as little as possible about her powers in order to maintain control over her for as long as possible. Vin's paranoia is extreme, but at this point in the book, we already begin to understand it. Her life has been nothing short of horrible at this point, and the only person she ever trusted in her life betrayed her. Rather than having a hard time believing her reaction, my heart broke as I started to understand her reaction and empathize with her. On a brighter note, Vin meets Spook, Club's nephew, who is a tin-eye, or tin-misting. He speaks with a street slang that is hardly understandable. Spook informs Vin that there is to be a meeting of the crew members in the most endearingly shy and awkward way possible. During the meeting, Kelsier and the crew flesh out their plan. Vin is shocked to see that everyone is serious about overthrowing the Lord Ruler, and equally shocked that Kelsier cares about her thoughts and feedback. They identified that the Luthadel garrison, the Great Houses, the Steel Ministry, the Lord Ruler himself will be their major obstacles, and begin to plan to deal with all of them. Breeze will be in charge of recruiting Ska to create Yeadon's army. Ham will be the one to train them. Kelsier has already begun to sow seeds of chaos among the noble houses, with the goal of starting a house war, giving Yeadon's army the instability that will lead to a chance for them to seize the city if they can somehow get the Luthadel garrison out of the city, possibly by threatening the pits of Hathsin and the Lord Ruler's atium sly, at Vin's suggestion. Kelsier also claims to have discovered a secret 11th allomantic metal that supposedly has the power to deal with the Lord Ruler, only if he can figure out how it works. Kelsier has also managed to replace a high-ranking nobleman named Lord Renew, with an extremely convincing imposter. He will be using the noble houses to smuggle weapons into Luthadel for the Ska Rebellion. Vin's responsibility in the plan will be to infiltrate the noble high society by attending their balls disguised as Valette, Renew's niece, to gather information and further sow discord between the noble houses. As the meeting is concluding, with the last major concern left unaddressed being the Steel Ministry, we are finally introduced to Marsh, Kelsier's older brother. Kelsier dismisses the crew to speak with his brother, but Vin, being Vin, decides to eavesdrop on them. During their conversation, we discover that the brothers have a tenuous relationship. In their youth, Marsh dedicated his life to trying to overthrow the Lord Ruler, going so far as to lead the Ska Rebellion himself. He views Kelsier as a frivolous and selfish individual. Kelsier admits that the description was accurate to his younger self, but also manages to convince Marsh that he is serious, and not just trying to hijack the Ska Rebellion to enrich himself. We also get hints that Kelsier lost someone very dear to himself and Marsh in the pits. Marsh agrees to help Kelsier deal with the Steel Ministry. Kelsier was aware of Vin's espionage, but only because she was too inexperienced to avoid wearing metal. He talks to her and tells her to prepare for her Mistborn training. Shocked that they're beginning so quickly, she eagerly agrees, and they make their way out into the night. Kelsier gives Vin her first Mistcloak. Mistcloaks are hooded garments made from a lightweight material that consists of ribbon-like silks of dark gray cloth, sewn together at the shoulders and chest. It is clothing that immediately identifies one as Mistborn, while also helping them conceal themselves in the mist. Kelsier immediately tries to impart on Vin that the mists are their realm, and that she should embrace them. She is initially hesitant, concerned that guards might spot and confront them, but Kelsier assures her that due to almost all Mistborn being high-ranking nobles, any guards who do manage to spot them will do their absolute best to avoid them at all costs. All of these interactions between Kelsier, Vin, Marsh, and the rest of the crew do a great job of establishing the dynamic that can be found between Kelsier and the people that he chooses to work with. You really get the impression that he is earnest, and he wants more than anything to improve the final empire. Kelsier teaches Vin the basics of allomancy, how each power has a pair consisting of two metals, one that pushes and one that pulls. They focus on the 6 metals whose powers are the least familiar to Vin. If any of the allomancy stuff is overwhelming or confusing to you, I've got a video coming out specifically going over the basics of allomancy that should help. Vin is understandingly overwhelmed by all the new experiences and powers, and needs to be saved by Kelsier on more than one occasion, while learning how to fly, with steel pushes and iron pulls. But she seems to be a quick learner, and devours the information Kelsier provides hungrily. After their training concludes for the night, they head towards Feliz, the city where Renew, Kelsier's false nobleman's estate, is located. Vin is shocked that Kelsier is giving her so much information. It just doesn't make sense to her why he would concede his leverage over her so quickly. She confronts him about this as they travel. Kelsier makes it abundantly clear that he does not want anyone on his crew who does not trust him, and challenges him with the last possible way he could be trying to control her, money. He gives her all 3,000 boxings that he took from Cayman. This is more money than Vin has ever imagined having her entire life. After this gesture, Vin decides to say, her reasoning being that she wants to see what happens next. I do too. Kelsier reveals to Vin that he thinks everything about the Final Empire is just wrong. Ash shouldn't fall from the sky, and the plants should be green, not brown. None of this makes any sense to Vin. That's how the world has always been for her. But nothing about her experiences involving Kelsier and his crew live up to anything that she's grown to expect. Upon arrival in Feliz, we are met with the final 2 members of Kelsier's crew, Lord Renew and Sazed, the Terraceman Keeper, who loves talking about various religions that existed before the iron grip of the Final Empire destroyed them. The Terrace are the preferred servants of nobility, and Sazed is an excellent example of why. He is extremely competent, patient, and polite. Renew is the greatest impersonator that Vin has ever met. Everything from his bearing to his estate is immaculate. Renew requires a private meeting with Kelsier, and Sazed is left behind to prevent Vin from eavesdropping. As they are left alone, Vin gets to know Sazed, who is far less docile and more opinionated, as well as much more easygoing than Vin expected. Vin almost immediately starts taking a liking to Sazed. Kelsier and Renew return, and they discuss Vin's role in the plan in more depth. Vin seems to finally start to believe that Kelsier is the man that he appears to be. She asks Sazed if Kelsier is a good man, and he replies that Kelsier is one of the best men that he has ever known. Brandon is an expert at delivering a ton of information very quickly in a way that feels natural, and this section of the book is a great example of this. By the end of this first 8 chapters, we already have a solid grasp on the final empire, Kelsier, Vin, the rest of Kelsier's crew, and their plan to help Eden and the Scar Rebellion overthrow the Lord Ruler and steal his atium. We have been introduced to the basics of allomancy, and we understand everyone's motivations for what is to come. Vin still has a lot to learn, and Kelsier has left us with as many questions as he's given us answers. I'm incredibly interested to see Vin's growth as an allomancer. I also want to learn more about every single member of the crew, especially Kelsier and his secrets. Their plans still seem a little bit ridiculous, but after seeing Kelsier in action, I started to question my doubts in them. I really hope you enjoyed this recap. If you have any questions at all about this section, just let me know in the comments and I'll reply as soon as I can. Thanks so much for reading along, and I look forward to talking about the next section of the book with you soon. Have a great day. Kelsier appears to tear